Seer Show is a live broadcast of truth seekers and believers, empowering the evolution of consciousness. Rafael and Celeste will dive deeper than the mainstream media while answering the mind's deeper questions and transforming conversations. They will have unique guest speakers who will share knowledge, tools, and techniques to create coherence in our mind, body, and spirit.
Good morning, good morning.
And good evening.
Yeah, coming live from New York and
Live from Queensland, Australia.
so Celeste, we're so novice, aren't we? That we have technical difficulties. Otherwise, today's show is going to be a little shortened because we've been dealing with some technical difficulties on both our ends. But one of the things that we have to do is just push forward, right?
Yeah, and be patient. We sorted it out, and
We still have to sort some more out.
Yeah, the next we say we got it right. But that's the thing. It's like not losing patience, just try and figure it out. And the show must go on. I mean, that's 20 years theater in me where I'm like, we're not canceling. We're going to sort it out. We'll be a bit late. The curtain will open late, but it's the same show, right?
Yeah.
So it's all good. The audience just got some extra popcorn. We're here.
Or vegetables, depends how healthy you want to be.
The popcorn makes you constipated. For every bowl of popcorn, you have to have at least 2 glasses of water, okay? Now everyone knows. It's really important.
That's it. So you have a bunch of really cool slides that we want to start talking about. So what I'd love to do is, here's the thing, right? You come with intention. You come with, you're ready to deliver. And every single time you do that because you want to engage our audience in what's going on and how we need to take care of us, right? So I would love for you to, I'm just going to sit back and I'm not having popcorn, but I'm going to have a little coffee, sit back and let you get crazy a little bit. And I'll interject from time to time. So I'm curious. As what you have a bunch of amazing slides, and I want you to share with us.
There's naked people on the slides too, I just realized. So we need to go back into our technical settings and make sure it's, for the others.
They had closed when you had put them on first. What are they doing? They're getting frisky.
It's a Rolling Stone cover. But before going into the Rolling Stones, like Rafael, we said we were going to share books. We're going to share amazing authors and journalists. And we're almost in a category of being very passionate journalists. We want to uncover true stories, a little bit sort of that turning the stones over and going, well, that's not really in the mainstream media. Why not? Oh, show me.
These are a few books. She was just on my show. Really good stuff.
Okay. What does it take? 30 seconds. Okay.
Success, right? And then, of course,
that could be taken very badly if it was a man on the cover. I'm just letting you know.
Habits, how we handle our habits, the power of habit. These are just 4 books that I'm reading. Teamwork, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And Think and Grow Rich.
Oh.
Yeah. That's a great book. And I mean, there's so many books, but those are the 4 books I'm reading right now.
At the moment.
Yeah.
Think
and
Rich.
Grow Rich. I've read it several times. I'm rereading it. I read it a little bit of every day. Teamwork is with a gentleman, and I've had so many people on my show. Yeah, Matt. So Matt, great book based on, how to be a great leader. And when we think about leadership, where does it start, right? And I know that you're a great leader yourself there, young lady. And when we think about all the different things that we can, if I should say, deliver or share with people. It's leadership. And I think that one of the things that we need to be able to share every day is a vision. And I think that's where leadership truly goes into place with that vision that we have. As a leader, we need to have vision. We almost need to like have a time machine. Where do we want to be when we're done, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. But I think leadership also then comes from being observant, learning from others. Oh, you, Mr. Rafael, you managed to have your phone not on silent.
You know what that is, right?
You should. I actually should force you to take that phone call right now in front of
No,
all
it's
our
not a phone call. You know what it is, right? It's 5 a.m. my time, right?
So that would have been the news flash.
That would have been the news flash. But
Well,
here's the
not
news
this
flash.
time, but next time.
Here's the news flash. We're not having one today.
No, next time.
Right.
You know, you just said with leadership, it's you got it to get to the point there, to have the good intentions, to have the vision. You need to have other people around you who inspired you and allowed you to think that open-minded.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we get caught up through our upbringing or culture or different environmental based. We're not open enough to see visions and goals. And so if you go into leadership, it means reading a lot, watching documentaries, listening to very good broadcasts like the Seer Show. You know, so and for me, I mean, I grew up at very young age listening to Alan Watts, you know, things like that. That really let my mind travel in a very creative way about existence and consciousness, that later on in my teenagehood, it almost kept me out of trouble a bit, because I could see a little bit more of the outcome of the goal or the ending and what the intentions were. So, I mean, that's what we're talking about today. Really good journalism, really good authors. One of my favorite ones is Hunter S. Thompson. And he was mainly known, and I'm really curious to obviously hear your opinion because you're in America. And so he was mainly famous for being an extreme rebel. And, you know, the definition for rebel is a person who does not obey authority or follow usual standards. And I love the way the word usual standards, it doesn't fit. Anyone who knows Hunter S. Thompson, you can't put the two into a sentence. So just quickly about his life. For those who haven't heard from him at all, the top 3 movies that are also a really interesting book that are extremely sort of mind-opening is Hell's Angels, which I have not read, by the way. I want to make that very clear. I don't think I have the guts for that. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and The Rum Diary. They were obviously quite famous because Johnny Depp was in it and they were very good friends. But for those people who want to read and open their minds to very different styles of writing and literature and sort of that journalism style, Hunter S. Thompson was one of these people. He went through different styles to actually get to his own gonzo style. And that's what most people know him for, the Rolling Stones magazine, writing in the gonzo style. And so the reason I'm sharing him with you today is because it's okay for an artist to go through different versions of art, or a singer of different versions of how you're going to sing. You know, journalism, it's okay if you go through different sections. I mean, he actually started as a sports journalist after being kicked out by the Air Force. And obviously he was kicked out of the Air Force because he was literally, quote, you know, being a rebel and pulling other people from the Air Force into it. And they kicked him out for that because he wasn't able to fit in. He always had that very crazy mind. And but this is a person, obviously it's on the screen. He was born in 1937, but then died at 2005. And the sad story is because he had such a wild lifestyle that people know him for. It's the whole drug, sex, rock and roll, the hallucinogenic drugs. It was so extreme in his 20s and 40s that unfortunately he is one of these incredible, fascinating, intelligent people who unfortunately decided to commit suicide due to the pain and the suffering. Now, I want to make this clear, like to the viewers and to the audience, I'm not here to idolize his lifestyle, because I think it's tremendously sad that we have extraordinary people like him. that wrote for Time magazine, the Rolling Stones, did all these famous movies and books, yet his crazy lifestyle forced him into the position to actually end his life. And I think that's sort of a bit of that wake-up call for everyone in just going, don't let your creative mind drag you into addiction almost. And there's that part where they sort of go, well, it enhances your creativity, but then again he also used it for sedation. So when you look at extreme artists or extreme journalists, they were taking the alcohol and the drugs and hallucinogenic drugs to either enhance their writing and explore even further, but then sort of that sad sedation to calm the mind almost. So there is a very sad ending to Hunter S. Thompson. And I've watched so many wonderful documentaries. And when you listen to his family and to the two wives he had, I mean, he wrote novels. He was actually very romantic. He was kind. He was loving, but he loved the guns as well. So when the pain and the suffering started kicking in after his 40s and 50s, he started to get dangerous, because there's a combination of passion for guns and also hallucinogenic drugs is not a good combination.
No, not at all.
Not at all. So again, I really want to make this clear that I'm not idolizing the lifestyle. I'm actually sharing this because I want to have a bit of a wake-up call that there's amazing people, had an amazing life story, and everyone talks about what they did, but how did it end? And he was very generous before he made the decision in 2005 in February at his farm near Aspen, which he called the Owl Farm, before he took his own life with a gun. He was very generous to his family. He actually planned his own funeral, of course, being extremely eccentric. Johnny Depp actually paid for it. And to give an example of his funeral and how this is a person who made a decision to not keep on living because of the suffering, but he's like, I'm going to make sure that my funeral is the way I want to have it. I mean, that's quite
about planning, right?
Yeah. So he actually had himself cremated and been stuffed into a cannon and being exploded all over the sky as a firework. Now, I've actually personally been to a funeral in Sydney where someone had this wish. And Rafael, I can tell you, it's a really extreme feeling, vibration, energy to know that the fireworks that are also going to come down, the ashes that So, going back to why I'm sharing Hunter S. Thompson, I want people to know that there was more behind than just the extreme alcohol, guns, extreme outlaw. I mean, he was arrested several times. He would get other people into trouble all the time. But the interesting part is he changed throughout the life. He went into political journalism. He went into sports journalism. He then wrote about music. And I think it's very wonderful to see how we can celebrate someone's life in being raw and honest. And one of the things he said in the interviews when he was later in his early 60s, and unfortunately, obviously, the suffering has kicked in and he's already slurring. He can't write anymore. So that's where the suffering comes in, because he can't be who he really is anymore.
Right.
He actually said, I was good at my work and I was honest. And that always resonates with me and with what we do, Rafael. It's being honest. And I know stories can have different perceptions, but there is sort of, are you speaking the truth, with your story?
Right.
And so that's what I really loved about him. He also once said, I treat words like music. And I always found that very, very beautiful about him too. But, age of 67, he really, unfortunately, couldn't function anymore. And that is still an age where you should be very proud of the work that you've created. And I'd love to talk to you about, the Rolling Stones magazine. which was started obviously in the 60s, and there was a lot of controversial stories to that one as well. But because he had the backstage pass to being a writer for the Rolling Stones, that's how he actually got into all the parties and into all the trouble, and he met all these crazy people. So the actual story to his success, and this is what I want to also really share with today. It's not so much sometimes what you know, it's who you know as well. And we often speak about tribe, community. We bounce ideas off each other. And Hunter was famous for being the guy with the backstage pass, and he got everywhere he wanted, and he became really close friends. I mean, there's stories of him even with Bill Clinton getting completely drunk and out of order, and there's obviously the very famous show of Jack Nicholson, and I really want to share this one because his own friends would say, friends and family, we love him for who he is, but he's dangerous. He would really get people into drugs and alcohol and extreme partying, and Jack Nicholson was one of them. He would actually go to his house and spread it full with blood and shoot at the house and then just keep driving. I mean, that's an extreme friendship, you know. There's one other crazy thing I want to share. I don't have a slide of it. I'll have to read it out. I wasn't too sure about the copyrights, but there was Jack Nicholson shared a story where his very young daughter, who saw Hunter like an uncle, he sneaked in a present that was labeled with her name, and inside was a distorted, like, dead rat, and which is very disturbing for a young girl who's very excited to open Christmas presents, and she sees the rat and the shock, and it just kicks in. And this is the note he wrote. Dear Lorraine, this will teach you a lesson about trusting men, which will be very valuable later in your life. You're welcome, Uncle Hunter.
Talk
Merry
about
Christmas, Lorraine.
Yeah.
So
talk about deep thinking there, if you will, right? Because the message is don't trust men.
Because he was the kind of man no one should be trusting, right?
Right. And he's right in a point, right? Don't trust humans. Forget men. Because there's both evil women and men. It's not just men. So he had a point, but for some reason he only saw men as evil. Meanwhile, there's so many evil women as well. So we got to think about humanity. Where has humanity gone? Who are the people that we're looking at as role models? And the fact that he did this to this young girl just goes to show that, yes, don't trust not only men, don't trust men like him.
And I wonder now what he would, now we're going through the whole, you just said female and men, and I wonder if he would have rewritten it, don't trust anyone.
Right.
This is valuable for your life. So, and I think it's so sad that he's not around anymore, because honestly, Rafael, it was only 2005. He was only 67.
Right.
Some people write operas, books, shows at such late age.
Absolutely.
And, I've got heaps of books of him, but obviously one of them is The Kingdom of Fear. That's a personal advice of mine. But for those who are
cool.
Yeah. And it talks about addiction. It really talks about enhancement and sedation and all his crazy experiences. And it's almost impossible to try and understand his mind. But the reason I chose him is because he has such an extraordinary story of being a bit of a rebel, but also an agitator. And an agitator is, again, the meaning is sort of someone who wants to get other people to protest and to stand up for something. It takes guts to do that. And I think nowadays, especially being in 2022, I'd like to see more journalists like him, not the lifestyle.
Right.
Okay. I'm idolizing his writing style.
Mhm.
To be so raw and honest. Everything you read from him, some things you have to read 2-3 times to almost see all the triple meanings in it.
Right.
So for people that want to read very controversial, very outspoken things, Hunter S. Thompson will take you on a journey. And he actually once said, letting your literal mind travel. That was sort of his intentions with the writing.
Yeah. You know what, Celeste, one of the things that is happening in our time today is everybody has become a little bit of a wimp. They don't want to hear the truth. You got to be careful how you say things, when you say things, whose feelings you're hurting. You can't truly speak the words that you may want to speak, because whose feelings are you hurting? So with all the thin-skinned people nowadays, what happened to get over it, be thick-skinned, don't take it personally, but allow somebody to speak their mind. And I'm not talking about bigotry, because that should never be put out there, right? Anybody who's a bigot should literally be put away for
Blow up in a cannon.
right? But you know, when we talk about bigotry or sexism or, you know, different races and the way people feel towards each other, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that sometimes people can't speak their mind on general things because, oh no, I'm going to hurt this person's feelings or that person's feelings. If you go back, even on television shows, they were way different 20 years ago, 30 years ago, way different. And it wasn't about hurting people's feelings. It was about, this is really what it's like.
Yeah.
And yeah, some of it was wrong. Don't get me wrong on that. Some of it was wrong, but a lot of it was just raw truth. It is what it is, right? So, yeah.
And, you know, the Rolling Stones was, and I'd love to hear about your experience, and obviously living in New York, and you grew up in America, that how did you live through the times of Rolling Stones? And because that, for me, again, to mention today, that's why Hunter was very famous for, but the Rolling Stones were one of the first very extreme written magazines. You know, it started with music, but then also into political things and things like that. And I was looking through so many different documentaries, and the stories. I mean, I have like 50 of them I'd love to mention, but I mean, the Charlie Manson thing, I mean, they got it completely wrong. They interviewed him and they actually thought he was very sane and very lovely. He was just very creative and spiritual, yet then they had to apologize and actually rewrite the whole article again. And you're like, wow, how can that have printed, if you think about that, you know, going back? I mean, Brooke Shields, she was 12 when she was on the front cover in that very sexy pose. I mean, that would be outrageous nowadays.
Correct.
You know, Sting, he was talking about how they would be interviewed and the journalists would sort of try and become their friends and then get them to speak sentences that were personal and that would be put in writing. So it was very sort of misleading. So the Rolling Stones magazine, everyone knows about it, but what if you really look into what they were writing, there's some very extreme stories out there. So for anyone who wants to sort of again read something that is sort of going to make them creative and think out of the box, go back into like the Rolling Stone magazines. There were some extreme things there. Dolly Parton spoke about it a lot. Red Hot Chili Peppers, if you remember, when John Frusciante left, Rolling Stone simply just airbrushed him out of the cover, printed it, and said, that's our version. And, you know, the boys, the four of them actually went onto media and said, guys, we actually didn't allow Rolling Stones to do that. So they were the first people who were doing their own thing, right? So journalism was starting to twist a bit. And it was almost like, did people get fear in being interviewed? Whereas nowadays, we can do video chat. It's real, it's raw. We can't clip it. You know, we can't edit it. So I like that more than back then, having someone interview you, but then sort of change it a little bit. So for anyone who's interested in that, go back into the Rolling Stones magazines. And there's one other thing I'd love to mention. I'm very into photography. And so for those who love photography, and what I mean by photography is capturing a moment of history or a moment of a person or a story, look up Annie Leibovitz. And so just type in the Rolling Stone magazines, and Annie, she was the most creative photographers of the Rolling Stones. And that started this incredible revolution, whereas with one picture, you could feel the story, you could feel the person. So on a creative level, and talking about journalism and extraordinary people, and you're into photography, or you want to understand the psychology of how to capture a precious person, you know, a moment, look up Annie Leibovitz. She was fascinating, and she actually, I think, made the Rolling Stones really famous because the goddamn covers, it would catch people's eyes. Huh? We can't hear you. The voice. You're unmuted. You're unmuted. You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
We would love to hear it.
Sorry. So, you know, it's very interesting when we think back, and we talked about, you know, back in the day, how people used to do things, right? And even manipulate the news, if you will, or what we wanted to see. And you know what? It's not that different. It's not that different today, because it's, if you're listening to the news, which I don't, you know, I only listen if how the weather's doing, and because there's some truth to that, right?
Yeah.
But we're still being manipulated by what we are allowed to see, right? So in order for us to get a real world view, we're going to have to look between the lines and find out the truth for ourselves. We cannot take it just because some news station said something. It's because that's the spin that they have for us to look at it. So you're right in the respect of, yes, they did all these things to manipulate the way back in the day, Rolling Stones, what they wanted us to know, right? Even though the fact that they rewrote articles because they go, oh, we're in trouble, let's fix it, right? But that's still happening today. So journalism, it's still in the old ages, and now it's like, who can we fool? How do we come forth? And who do we trust nowadays?
Who do we trust? You know, you said the word allowed, and that's unfortunately almost the key point. Who's deciding what we are allowed
That's it.
to learn and see? And that's why, you know, I have people that say to me, oh my God, Celeste, you can't even walk down a stone road. You have to uncover every single stone. It's going to take you. So because I made the decision, I allow myself to research everything. So are we almost saying with this show, if you don't let someone else allow what you know, so have almost let go of that self-doubt, let go of lining up to see what just, you know, the news have to say. Allow yourself to know more and go down the deep rabbit holes. And it doesn't have to be conspiracy. No one's saying extreme things like that, but go down the rabbit hole. Allow yourself to do that, because we have been quite conditioned to just think and see what's on the mainstream media and in school system. Don't get me started. we were talking about amazing things like Hunter S. Thompson. So I wonder, it'd be really interesting to know if you would have put him as a teacher into a class. I think that would have been quite interesting to see what he would have shared.
Yeah.
I had so many beautiful notes about Hunter S. Thompson, and one thing I also wanted to share today about him, which resonates with a lot of people, is when he was 14, he lost his father to cancer, and he watched him die. And his father was quite a rebel in politics as well, very outspoken, also an alcoholic and into guns, cycle repeats. We see that all the time. What happened was because he was so hurt, that's when he went into enhancing his ability to be heard. Right. And so often when we look into creative people, there was often a turning point of maybe suffering or a confrontation that made the person go, right, that's it. I'm not going to do a normal 9-to-5 job. I don't want to fit on. I have a voice. I want to share things. Like, he was apparently really famous in his neighborhood at the age of 12, walking around telling everyone he's going to be president, and they should start becoming friends with him to vote for him later. And they should appreciate that they already know him personally. That's the kind of character he was.
Right.
So, I'm sharing this death part, the suffering that he was confronted with at the age of 14. That was the point where he decided, I want to be heard. I want to impact lives. So that's very interesting. So, for all those people who maybe are stuck in the suffering because something happened 10 years ago or something happened 5 years ago, use it. It's not always, it's beautiful if it's love that is making you have an incredible career. But if it's pain is also part of life. Let it out. There's people that have used that to, for example, in this case, become an extraordinary journalist and writer, the star that came from his heart.
When we think about letting it out, as you say, right? It's life, and you talked about all the different stages, right? We go through so many different stages. It's almost, imagine an actor or an actress, right, playing one role their whole life, or playing all the roles in that play.
And different chapters.
Right? It's not the same. It's not Groundhog Day. It shouldn't be Groundhog Day. You shouldn't do the same thing every single day. Your life should be worth telling. So your life, my life, the life of anyone listening should be worth telling 100 years from now. Yeah. And there should be some insight into why we did what we did, how we did it, and what our thoughts were. And what's the best way for you, Celeste, for me, Rafael, to be able to share that knowledge 100 years after we pass? Because I've already invited you to my 100th birthday, right?
Yeah. I know exactly what to wear.
And that's not coming for another 100 years anyway. But, here's the thing. After we pass, 100 years after we pass, will we be remembered? What is it about us that's going to allow someone to go, yeah,
I'm inspired.
When she was young and she started that show with that guy from New York, or that guy from New York when he started that show with that girl from Queensland. What were they like? What did they do? What challenges did they go through? And how did they deal with them? When we think with adversity, it's not how harsh or how hard your life is. It's how you dealt with it, right?
Deal with it.
How
And I mean,
you deal
that's
with
what
it.
they say about trauma. You do
Mm,
realize that trauma is not what happened. Trauma is never an incident.
mhm.
It's the way you react.
That's right.
And that is, coming from the counseling world or the psychology world. It's really, people still haven't quite divided that one or separate or understood that one. They go, well, the trauma was the car accident. It
Mm,
wasn't the car accident. It was how you lived your life after the car
that's right.
accident. That's the actual trauma. Yeah.
That is the trauma. That is the trauma. So today's show is a little bit shorter than we
No,
expected.
but I got to share my favorite journalist and author, and
You did.
I really want to inspire people to look into his life and not just see the extreme lifestyle, which we're
Mhm.
not idolizing. I want people to go, how sad that he committed suicide. And here in Australia, and I'm going to say this on live broadcast, I looked up the statistics today to have the right information. We here in Australia, we have up to 8 people a day.
Mm,
And I think that's not the natural course,
right. Right.
and and Hunter was such a fascinating person. So for anyone who wants to really read some good stuff, it's Hunter S. Thompson. But just keep in mind, learn about his story, and don't don't idolize the extreme lifestyle he has.
The negativity, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
idolize the writing and feel through it, and
Mm,
be aware in what position you might be in, if it comes to addiction, or if it comes to, you had something that's happening and you want to share it, use that.
And when we talk about addiction, there is so many different aspects to addiction. I think that would be a great topic for next week.
Should we do that?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Because addiction comes in so many forms, shapes, and sizes, right?
Yeah.
If you think about the way we deal with things, sometimes we allow things to take control.
There's the word
That
allow. Yeah.
is
We need the word to allow yourself. Is that the book you maybe want to share for next week?
no.
You got to
It's not
choose a
like that.
really good book about addiction, something that we can share with the viewers for next time. I started with Hunter S. Thompson. We now got to do something that will help with the addiction and not promote it, okay?
No, what we want to talk about is it's so easy to get addicted to something. And it's when you're in control, nothing can control that for you. But first you have to get into control, right? Otherwise, addictions are very easy, whether it's sugar, whether it's staying late at night watching, playing games or watching movies.
That's right. Well, it's either behavior or substance. So two different directions: substance and then behavior. A lot of people don't realize it's like you're addicted to thinking negatively about yourself. You're addicted to being paranoid. That's also addiction.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we're going to talk about both things, substance and behavior.
Yeah, I mean, because you have people who are addicted to sex, people who are addicted to gambling, people who are addicted to sweets, people who are addicted to, I don't know. So there's so
Fitness as
much.
well. Fitness. I have a very dear friend. It's actually fitness, and the fitness shakes and the overdoing it.
Overdoing it, yeah.
Yeah.
Fitness is good, which I work out, which I'm going to go do in a little bit.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when it starts to hurt you, fitness is terrible. Right? So next week,
Controlling your life.
we're going to talk about addiction.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone. I'm happy I got to share the famous journalist Hunter S. Thompson.
Yes. Everybody have an amazing, when I say amazing, I mean amazing. Whether it's the rest of your day out here in the US or your evening in Queensland.
Yes, a good night's sleep with goal-kicking dreams, the future vision and good intention dreams.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody,
Good night.
Celeste, we'll
Bye for
talk soon. All right.
now.